Hello and welcome to episode 82. Thank you for joining us in our ongoing series to review everything Nintendo. Today's console is often seen by many as a hasty stopgap handheld, and that's not entirely unjustified. However, there is in my opinion much more to this device than just that, so please settle down and get comfortable as we explore the first major upgrade to the long-running and highly successful Game Boy series from Nintendo. So, without more ado, please welcome the GBC, or as it's formerly known, the Game Boy Color. Being first offered for sale October 21, 1998, estimates vary considerably on actual sales, as Nintendo blended the numbers across the series. However, informed sources have estimated numbers ranging between 42 and 55 million units in total, worldwide. Now let's briefly take a look back at last week's photo quiz question, and we had several guesses, with one viewer correctly identifying it. Clearly they knew what it was, but they deleted their comment, and to respect that decision, I'll not mention them here. A few others were very close in their attempts too, but were not quite there. So what was it? It was the Pocket Sakura. This was a pedometer that was used with a Game Boy Color game, being exclusive to Japan. This game was popular enough that it even spawned its own official version of a Game Boy Color console. Made in stunningly clear and transparent red casing, it came decorated with an onyx black bezel that was engraved with leaf motifs. Well done to all who took part, and I thank you all for participating. And that beautiful console leads me in nicely to this week's topic, the Game Boy Color, and as with previous episodes I'd like to start with the instructions booklet, which just happens to be a folded sheet with this handheld. The first statement I'd like to draw your attention to here, is the highly touted choice for their new screen technology that they're using. Here it's formally identified as Thin Film Transistor, or TFT for short. The first commercial TFT-based, LCD product was what you see here, boasting a 2.1-inch, Epson ET10 screen. Its claim to fame is that it was the first color LCD pocket TV, released back in 1984. This product is also what convinced the electronics industry that a TFT, LCD screen would eventually replace the somewhat obsolete cathode ray tube, or CRT as it was known, being the standard television display technology of this period. And perhaps mentioned as a tongue-in-cheek inclusion, the next statement seems to rub salt into the wounds by presenting the lack of a backlit screen as some sort of blessing. As they tell you, it saves you batteries. I'm really not sold on this being a worthwhile advantage. Because if we're being honest, who'd really prefer the original to a modern-day modified backlit screen, just to save a bit of battery life? Really? Anyone? 32,000 is a lot of shades and colors. However, it's really the palette mapping limit that actually forces many games to use less than the 56 colors identified here. Many developers obviously choose to do less than the 56 shown, as it's easier to program, while a few actually use the whole potential to achieve a high color effect. They did this by swapping out the palette coloring used in each scanline, a difficult and time-consuming endeavor. As an example, a game like Atlantis does this on its intro screen, and it's done to stunning effect. The infrared communications port made its first appearance on the Game Boy Color, and I think Nintendo had grand designs for this new functionality at its conception. Identical to the TV remotes, it had the capability to send and receive small packets of data. But rather than having the convenience to, say, wirelessly swap and trade Pokémon, we only actually got limited functionality. Things like going to a particular floor of a building and receiving and opening a mystery gift. Sadly, trading still relied on the old-fashioned link cables. This is followed by a schematic of the Game Boy Color, with descriptors identifying major components and their functionality. Sections 4 and 5 focus on battery requirements and safety, as well as various accessories that are authorized by Nintendo for use with the GBC console. While Section 6 deals with the nuances of having 3 different types of playable games packs, or cartridges on the Color system. Let's look at the first one. It states that the new Game Boy Color console will magically play the original gray games cartridges using between 4 and 10 brand new colors, but will only use 4 shades of gray or green on both the original and Game Boy Pocket. The second type are known as dual mode cartridges, often black, but can be other colors, especially if they're Pokémon games. These are capable of showing the full 56 colors out of that original 32,000, but are equally compatible of being used by both the Pocket and original Game Boys, where they'll revert to display the system's 4 shades of gray. Their shape is identical to the original packs, so reading the original box helps to identify the dual mode games. The third and final option is the newly launched, Crystal Case GBC exclusive packs. These games will not play on either the Pocket or original Game Boy. With that being explained, Section 7 goes on to show you how to correctly insert a games pack, while also ensuring it's not dirty or damaged. Section 8 is often put forward as some sort of secret knowledge on many a YouTube channel, when in fact it was well-known info back in the day, and it was also well explained in the console's instructions booklet. This, however, does not remove the coolness of this option. You see, Nintendo allowed you to choose a color theme when using an original Game Boy pack. They actually offered 12 unique color palettes and allowed you to select your preference at the startup screen, when Nintendo's logo first appeared, by utilizing a combo of control buttons and the D-pad together. And as mentioned earlier, the infrared port was very much an underutilized technology. The tried and trusted Game Boy Link cable carried on the tradition for anyone wishing to play any two-player game, or transferring tradable goods. This is fully explained in Section 10, where the scope of use for the infrared communications port is explored. Interestingly, it notes that the two consoles must be between 1.5 and 2 inches apart, and further to that, the triangle marks on the front of the Game Boy Color's case must be exactly aligned to function correctly. It can't use more than 2 consoles, and should not be used around a TV remote as this is likely to interfere with the transmission. A handy troubleshooting section, that's shown in a table format together with the 90-day warranty information, finishes up the information booklet. However, one thing that I never really picked up on before was the use of the launch colors of the initial consoles and the actual Game Boy Color logo, and who'd have guessed, they match. It's a cute little observation that was lost on me, until now. Some were surprised that Nintendo released such an apparently underpowered, unlit system, as the Game Boy Color, as it was not even as powerful as the Game Gear, which was released way back in 1990. That's a full 8-year window of development. However, the Color, as with all its predecessor systems, was notably more portable, definitely more affordable, and had a vastly greater library of top-notch quality games, better than any of its competitors, as well as many years of carefully built brand recognition behind it. As such, it continued to dominate the market, destroying all of its often far superior and more advanced competition. It achieved all of this, despite being only a simple 8-bit system. The American standard spelling of the word color, which omits the letter U, is consistent across the entire world, even in English-speaking countries that have the letter U as a norm. However, if you noticed, the correct spelling of color, that includes the letter U, actually appears in the instructions booklet used today, and yes, Canada has the additional letter U in our spelling of color, much like the UK and Australia. There are many variants and different colors of consoles issued since the original few were shown at its launch in 1998. Here we can see a nice selection of both standard and limited edition issued consoles. Please notice the prevalence and indeed reliance on Pokémon during this period of production, a trait that continues through to the current day, with the rarer ones shown here being exclusive to the Pokémon Center, with the vast majority of official versions and editions being shown here. This system, be it merely a stopgap handheld or not, was discontinued on September 25, 2003, a mere 5 years after its launch, following the release of its much more powerful successor, the Game Boy Advanced, in early 2001, with it being fully backwards compatible with both of the earlier Game Boy systems and Game Boy Color games. That the Game Boy Color was not deserving of its reputation, well, not entirely, it featured many remarkable adaptations. I have a Singer sewing machine that's fully controlled by a Game Boy Color that was boxed alongside the machine, complete with a games pack that allows embroidery and patterns to be made, and it's very effective. It's just one way this console broke its boundaries. There's a fishing lure attachment, that's actually used in the boat to help catch fish, and if you use the Mission Impossible game pack, you'll be able to turn your Game Boy Color into a TV remote, without any modification whatsoever. But to make the stock Game Boy Color function in poor or low light, and to get it to actually sound good, let alone to have a screen that's big enough to enjoy, and trying to take advantage of that beautiful new TFT screen in its full glorious detail, well, we all bought this monstrosity of an attachment. Yes, that contraption used an additional 2 AAA batteries, made it far less portable and made it far more expensive, therefore curtailing nearly all of Nintendo's claims of improvements. But, you know what? It had the games. And while I see it as an unmitigated indulgence, I did commission a solid aluminum Game Boy Color with upgraded backlit screen, enhanced speakers and amazing controls, coupled to a rechargeable internal battery. To me it fully realizes my highest hopes and desires from back in 1998. It's made by a company called Boxy Pixel, they call it their Game Boy Color Lite, and I love it. And that brings us nicely to this week's What in the World photo quiz question, where I ask you to try and identify an obscure Nintendo item from a fragment of a larger picture, and here it is. Any ideas? If not, tune into our next episode, but until then please feel free to like, comment and subscribe to our channel, but mostly I'd just like to thank everyone for just being here together with me, sharing this story.